Half of what happens to people is luck. You know, they need opportunities. The good news is that there's no one route they can follow. They can't follow everything that I did and they'll still end up writers. It's in that way, the profession is a great one because there's nothing you have to do to be a writer except write. My writing started definitely for the theater. There were theater classes in school and I took those classes. And a lot of my writing started out through deception, actually. We had to come up with monologues to do in class. And you were supposed to get monologues from the library, from famous sources, and do those monologues. So I started writing my own monologues and trying to pass them off to people as, like, this is a new author from New York who's famous, and I would write them and try and see if I could get my teacher to believe that this was somebody other than myself who wrote the piece. Inspiration comes from everywhere. I mean, I've never written a play or a short story or a movie in the same way. Sometimes it's a title, sometimes it's a character, occasionally it's a plot. What it usually is not is a theme. I usually don't write about, I want to write about race. I want to write about money. I never know where it's going to come from, but it usually doesn't come from myself. It doesn't come from my life. I'm not writing about when I was young or this was my parents growing up, or it tends to be just very fictional. It's like me pulling it out of my head, trying to find a story. But I'm inspired by the world around me. You know, I'm sort of weirdly comforted by no matter what I come up with, it's usually a lot smaller and a lot less shocking than half the stories that I read in the newspaper. Open the newspaper and read what's going on in the US or in Germany, or there are people who are capable of walking into a theater and shooting people, of putting their daughter in a basement for 20 years. These stories really happen. So I'm the amateur. These people are professionals.
Right, and then I ended up at the point where I said, well, I can write for myself because then I can't discover in the text anymore.
That's because secretly they don't feel guilty.
But guilty from outside.
I'm just letting you know that. Secretly they don't. The title of the workshop that I'm doing here in Venice is Improv for Writers, and the subtitle is Writing on Impulse and Without Fear. I think writers in general can often spend too much time thinking about what they're doing rather than going from the gut. So I sort of use the notion that I see a lot of actors doing, improving. They get up in front of people and they just quickly work. They get a subject from someone, or they're given an idea, or they come up with an idea quickly, and then they work it out in front of an audience. And not to be frightened of, writers I think tend to go off by themselves and work until they're ready to show you a perfect document. And I think a lot of times you can be helped by just getting it out in front of people. So I want to try and take people out of their comfort zone a little bit and make them feel that that's not a scary thing to do.
Say something, ask me some questions, or just don't give me the silent treatment.
I did an experiment for the Los Angeles Times this past year where I worked with another writer across the country. We were both online, and we were given an idea by the newspaper that readers had voted on, and they could watch us while we wrote back and forth in real time. And we just created a play as quickly as we could in front of people watching. And it was scary, but it was, because you were doing it in the moment, but it was very exhilarating as well to write freely like that and just with the first thing that came into your head. So that's the kind of thing I want to try with the writers here, is to let them look at how they write and see if there are other ways that they might go about it, and writing short things and quick things, and see if that frees them up in any way, as it has with myself. Blind Spot. It's called Blind Spot. Blind Spot. Does that make sense? For me, that line is a little more hazy. It's not as distinct, like this is film, this is theater. They can't exist together. I've constantly been looking at things that I write and saying, it's probably a play, but I think it could also be a movie. And And sometimes people think, oh, if it's been done as a stage thing first, it's going to be too small for the movies, but I just don't believe that. So I keep trying to make it work whenever I get the opportunity. You know, if I get an opportunity to make a film, then I go off and try and make one. But they take a long time. I guess I'm getting older and more tired of waiting for the process of getting enough money together to make films. So I go to the theater more and more often. And I also love just the connection of an audience with the material and actors. It's so much more immediate and real. So I think I'm ultimately drawn to keep going back to the stage.
In the middle of this, so here we go. You are gonna tell me everything you know, now!